Welcome back to my lovely IHP video podcast short watchers. I'm used to saying listeners. Good morning. Here, let's have some coffee together. It is time for a new adventure. And today we get to talk a little bit about those lovely relationships, the 5DC way for my Enlightenment soul age group or the other soul age groups, but the C is for self-empowered enlightened. Anyone who knows that mindset is everything, that the way you perceive things makes a difference. I get to learn from a lot of different educators. They are trauma educators, so they are therapists, clinicians from different walks of life, but all of them are staying updated with the new information that our lovely technology gives us time to see and look into, and they are all dedicated and devoted to helping people to know how to achieve inner well-being. And I have added to my curriculum mindfulness. Practitioners on the lovely list, and we'll see how many of these different items inform me of the same thing and then support me to support you and to keep on expanding any person who wants to be their infinite higher human consciousness potential to keep doing so. So being yourself. Let's start with that one. It's very straightforward for the person who has a restorative embodied self, who's able to navigate their integrated mind, so the left and right mode, in a uniform fashion. And this achievement, for some of us, comes naturally. The individual who tends to have a love cycle, because we won't have an inner critic or outer critic in our mindset. We'll have a contemplative moment and more, and sitting in equanimity, which is the neutrality that doesn't mean you're indifferent. It's the neutrality that means I'm going to look at my likes, I'm going to look at my dislikes. And as one individual on a planet with 8 billion individuals, or even if I'm in a household with 3, 4, or one, another, depends, I'm still a differentiated self. So the 5D person, whoever is inclined to already be here, is going to be a person who knows differentiation of the self. So their thoughts and their emotions are managed by the person, and that's what we get to talk about and why it's so important with relationships. So love language only involves compassion. It involves understanding or hearing yourself when you do shame, blame, fault, or even revenge. And when I say hearing, it would be the awareness, mindfulness, that any person can have active all on their own, if their own limbic system, of course. And I say limbic system because I learned from Daniel Siegel that our limbic system actually alerts us to what has value for us. So if your emotional spectrum is valuable to me, I will manage my temperature, meaning my charge, meaning my tone, meaning a lot of things. In fact, the only people usually that's a bit more challenging with for any person is the immediate family. So the parent or parents and your siblings. Why? Because you grew up with them. And what you can learn, if you learn good trauma, somatics, information, and I say good because they're rigid educators who dismiss compassion, dismiss emotions, and apparently are not in the knowing of the nervous system, the sympathetic, parasympathetic. They do know about the 2-year-old, but they're not aware of the breakdown of how reactivity works, and so they don't believe in the other information. There are some who don't even believe yet in the mirror neurons, for example, practitioners, because in a field and as an academic, I well know how this works, and it's a very sad thing, but then again, that's how it works, to accumulate data, to learn things, to open minds, and to debate, because the educators, the researchers, are people who enjoy learning. So they're going to be busy continuing to explore, because that's the point of how it moves forward, human evolution and all. Somehow, some people, educators or not, professionals or not, think that at a certain point you can have all of the information and you have to do it just one way. I mean, it's really a challenge for me to hear someone think of themselves as an educator or as a person who is intelligent when they decide that all the information from yesterday is correct and anything new must be something that is BS. It's like, okay, if you say so, but That's the rigid mind of an adaptive child. Trying to prove you're right or wrong, trying to control a situation or a person. And here's where there's so many facets that this takes place in, not just relationships. Worldwide, we've seen it, we keep seeing it. It's explainable in the absence of a devil or of an evil or of a conspiracy. It's explainable, humanly speaking. Your mind is what controls all of what's happening, but your emotions, this lovely nervous system, and the charge states of you as you grow up are what are going to be controlling you until you move into being a functional adult. And so that inner growth mindset, or a mindset that allows you to expand, is what's important. If you have an inner critic, which is part of a shame cycle, if you have an outer critic, which is part of a shame cycle, you're not going to move out of any type of conflict that is from within. And here's where people will hold implicit or explicit memory, charge states that affect their temperament and their interactions, and they will call it, that's my emotion and I'm going to stay this way, or they will be ashamed of their triggers, and all those are not necessary. So when a 5DC person is in their relationships, we don't treat our loved ones with shame. So the tone part, it's easier to do it with the individuals you grow up with. Once you get grown up with the household, that's where you would find the dynamics that take place in a way that is raw. And in fact, here's where, when I took the inner engineering course with Sadhguru, which is really lovely, he talks about our loved ones being quality control. And I would agree, quality for those who are not yet their functional adult and want to be. For those of us who instead are the functional adult, they get us to keep practicing to expand our window of welcome and our window of love, which is unconditional, and to lead our relationships with unconditional love, because that's what safe harbor and safe launching pad means. And so some people, they didn't have that growing up, so they have a non-secure attachment. Or even if they have secure attachment, they have these charge states that they begin justifying, because we justify the temperature. Oh, I got pissed because you did this thing to me. So when you justify the emotion, you're not working with it. You can't master your emotional plane, for my 5DC mystics. And you're not going to become forgiving nuance. Now, some people, they don't want to. They just want to be a part of their group. They feel safe. They're happy. When they're with another group, they don't care about how they treat them. They don't care about these emotions. And they don't really know that when you hear a Sadhguru, by the way, and he says, be responsive, not reactive, in this inner engineering course, one of the people in the class was like, what do you mean? I'm not responsible for, this and this and that. And I had just recently, I think, started learning about the mind from Daniel Siegel, and I was like, no, or maybe it was after, but I realized that what he was talking about can be explained the human way, which is when you're energized and you're not able to take a step back, you're being reactive, you're not responding. So what you also find out as you study the human body, and thank you Stephen Porges for this, is that we have what is the biological root state of us, which is red or yellow. That's in our, I think it's the sympathetic or the dorsal-vagal, or it might be fight flight, but the green is when you're engaged in your social engagement system, so the ventral vagal nervous system, and that would be the newer parasympathetic nervous system branch that came around once we moved into being mammalians. And I don't remember how that works, but the brain goes through a whole development as well. Again, relationships. We actually moved into becoming mammalian and caring for each other until that moment. I forget how they explain it, the evolutionary science or the evolutionary psychology people. I have to get that data. But meantime, once we became these mammals and we had the ability to feel emotions and in a way of connecting them to each other, not just being, because the older branch, the reptilian older branch, parasympathetic nervous system, has fight, flight, freeze. And I will believe that the attach, cry, collapse, submit, please, appease are also part of that branch. So that's a defense mode. So our ancestors had defense mode until they were able to then have this mammalian mode, which is the social mode. And I am not the expert at hand. It's passing on information that I'm learning though. So I will not get it always accurate. Long story short, though, we're meant to be together, and we will have learned how to self-regulate based on co-regulation. So if the household isn't safe, that means we don't know how to self-regulate in a way that allows us to activate our social engagement system. And as Stephen Porges presents, we have this default mode network that has this, it's this other and the self, and it's always scanning. So if you are a person who's consistently scanning your territory and in defense mode, you're more likely to be wanting to hug a tree and not a person. And that's where I see a lot of people, secure attachment or not, disorganized attachment is even more upsetting and sad, because that type of individual has an intertwined defense mechanism and attachment system. So they will want to attach like any person will, so to create relationships, but their flight, fight, freeze, or attach, cry, collapse, submit, please, appease will always be engaged as well. And that will create a fragmented self, which is very confusing for them. And that's probably very upsetting, not to mention they will feel different and off. And when I see humanity not really treating each other nicely, I'd say that doesn't help them at all. And so, for my 5DC mystics, those of you who are in your Enlightenment soul age group, or at the very least, people who pick up on your oversoul in the collective, you will be those light workers that I heard so much about. And that's where we get to be safe havens or safe spaces for people to be able and grow up if they want to. Those who want to expand their consciousness. And that's why it's very important to keep in mind that every person has a story. They don't even know about it. And they might never know about it. And that's not important. What's important is that if they find a welcome, if they find the ability to be themselves, if they find softness while also being direct, so there's always ventral vagal nose, which people don't like in general, but the adaptive child learns to adapt and learns to be loved, and then learns that it's still safe to be themselves, which is what gives them the room to move into their restorative embodied self. And if they want to create a tendency of resiliency in using their own social engagement system, but they'll get to choose that one, because some people, as I said, they will marry those groups that have rigid leaders and rigid thinkers, because when that happens, the brain has this way of feeling good about being welcomed by those who think the same. So the adaptive child is going to find those who agree with them about being right, and they have the same list of items, and this oxytocin is released because, of course, they're welcomed in that group. And when they're around the other group, they're not feeling welcomed, or they're feeling different. The perception of yourself, though, and of others is what's very, very important. In fact, on that data point, let me read a couple things. So here's Jessica Fern, Polysecure. The statement that I'm reading is on Chapter 5, Attachment and Non-Monogamy. Authors on attachment theory will assert that being pair bonded is the prototype for attachment in adulthood, that couples need to create a couple bubble around them in order to ensure security, and that your partner needs to be the one single or main person that you emotionally depend on. I question if these criteria are even healthy from a monogamous standpoint. Open parentheses, a considerable amount of the monoromantic ideal can actually be codependency in disguise, close parentheses, comma. But at the very least, we can see how these ideas and assumptions within the field of attachment are excluding people in CNM relationships, which is for, I forget always that word. Shoot. I don't know why it doesn't want to stick. So, anyways, people who know the acronym, I'm going to look it up, but I always forget consensual non-monogamy. Thank you. There you go. And another data point. Now, this one's from a group of therapists that I'm learning thanks to my subscription with NICABM. And I believe it was Ebony that mentions this. No, Usha Tamalanara. I think I pronounced her last name right. I hope so. And she was sharing with us in this segment where we learn about repair and rupture, about a study that was done in 2020. This is by Samantha Joel and Paul Eastwood. They sampled or surveyed 11,000 couples. And they had 43 different data sets. And these were all to determine relationship satisfaction and what it was based on. And they used machine learning to quantify the predictive power of different variables among these couples. And what they found was that people's own judgments about the relationship, like how satisfied and committed they perceived their partners to be, and how appreciated they felt towards their partner, or how appreciative they were towards their partner, all of this explained about 45% of their satisfaction in the relationship. So it wasn't about personalities, it was about the dynamic of the actual relationship that contributes to the satisfaction of the relationship. The aspect about personality, in fact, again, gets put to the side because it's not the personality changing who you are, not who you are, that will affect how the relationship is. The 5 top variables that explain the most variance in relationship satisfaction are perception that your partner is committed to you, appreciating the partner, sexual satisfaction for your perception of how satisfied the partner is. So if a person perceived that the partner is less satisfied, that will affect one's own satisfaction. And 5, conflict and how conflict is dealt with. The data point that I was looking to share from Ebony instead, as we concluded this entire module, was where she shares how it's how we relate to things that make a difference and determine our well-being. And it's also if you're able to see in the lens of somebody else, right? So this is not just seeing. We discussed this in future episodes today some, and then I think it's Thursday or Wednesday. But being able to experience what someone else experiences in a way that they're telling you how they're experiencing it. Okay, so this, I have seen many people not do it. They don't know how to embody because they'll immediately say, oh, I don't like that idea or something. And I was thinking of an example that I give, which is cultural, where people have had these reactions. And I'm like, it's actually quite interesting that you're not becoming aware that everybody expresses their emotion differently. And for you, this ill is not really accurate. And I'm thinking of close proximity and sometimes, people getting too excited to see you, and example, I have one of my friends, they get so excited that they will start spitting, okay? It's not pleasant, of course, but to shame someone or to make them feel bad or to it's not necessarily accurate because it's cute and at the same time it's funny and it's human and it's a showing of affection that is of a person. So the idea of emotional expression is different based on culture, and being able to accept that people can be closer. For me, I'm part Neapolitan, Italian, and so we're very close. So I am used to dealing with what is a different type of wanting to share affection, and I embrace a heart that is passionate. So to me, proximity is the most amazing of things. Here's where I'm a Malian heritage. Being able to be loving and soft and gooey, and that's safe, that's normal. That's not you, it's not, oh my God, get away from me. But when you learn enough about why the rigidity happens, you learn, in fact, detachment categories, it says it all. And one of the findings, I forget which one of my courses it was in, they talked about how at the beginning of attachment category and or just attachment research, there's 2 bodies, that a group of them actually thought that the avoidant attachment was a healthy attachment. Instead, the avoidant attachment is a person who's disconnected from their self. There's an armor because there was not enough hugging and skin contact to activate that ventral vagal, and the infant had not been met enough in that contingent communication. So there's an absence, a complete absence of emotional and of being able to even be vulnerable. So there's a wiring, in fact, that creates frustration, longing, suffering, and even fear that remains stored until the person is able to move into, okay, wait a minute, it's okay, and have people essentially that walk them through it without making it into, oh, you're not ever here or not there, which, again, a lot of people are not actually emotionally or in their own mindset independent. They need each other. That's the biggest difference. A 5DC person is not going to be a person who needs you. They enjoy you. And so we build relationships, no strings attached. And therefore, we actually do understand seeing in the absence of needing us to be seen. And when it comes to codependency, we'll see spotted a mile away. And we won't be somebody who actually allows it to happen, but we won't shame it either. There are many areas that a person who is in a 5D body type, mind type, will automatically know, because they are people who expand consciously speaking. So we know how to create independent, safe relationships. And when people get into their non-secure attachment or a disorganized attachment, when there's modalities, even in temperature, so secure attachment individuals who will start expressing their own ideas in a way that is unnecessary, we'll know how to handle it, because there's no shame in somebody, again, reacting to what is a cultural difference. It's something natural for those of us who have been exposed to different cultures and who have a differentiated self. What does that mean? It means my thoughts and feelings are not affected because you go, ew. I'm going to think, okay, you obviously are from a different background, which is great and dandy, so am I, and thumbs up. Yay, we got to have an exchange. It's called expanding the horizons of what relationships can be. And when love is all you see and shame you understand, and you try to help those who want to move out of it to get out of it, it's called humanity becoming more humane. And for today, that is all. I have ran out of time. We talked about a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You can tune into the episodes. There's 2 or 3 of them on, and I will see you again soon. Have a great day.